Thank you very much. And, you know, it's overwhelming to see everybody here, and I greatly appreciate it. You're all very special. I guess I'll get started. I'll just explain a little bit about how I got there to Vietnam. It was about April, May 1965 at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was with the 101st Airborne Division. And at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, word came down that we were all getting a 30-day leave. And we thought, we'll do some maneuvers or whatever when we come back. Well, I took a 30-day leave. I came back to Fort Campbell. And when we got there, they said, you gotta take your clothes off. You're gonna turn everything in. Your dress screens, your fatigues, everything's going. And they issued us these boxes to put our clothes in. And then they gave us all brand new white underwear, you know, the boxes. And then they gave us boxes of green grit dye. And they said, you're gonna dye all your underwear green. So I said, wow, okay. And so we dyed all our underwear green. You wouldn't believe how many shades of green there are. So anyway, it was about in, well, we didn't know where we were going. We knew we were going somewhere, and we thought maybe Okinawa to train, do some jungle training and that sort of thing. But we didn't know, and they didn't tell us where we were gonna go. But on July 6th of 1965, they put us on, in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, they flew us commercial airlines to the San Francisco airport. And when we got off the planes, we got on buses. And they took us to the shipping yards, and we were met by what they call donut dollies. These are Red Cross workers, and they're handing out donuts and coffee and everything. And in front of us was a great big gray ship. And it was called the USNS General Leroy Elton. It was a troop carrier. Oh God, my brother's here. Anyway, the USNS General Leroy Elton, and it was a big Navy ship, and it was a ship that originally was gonna house 1,800 troops, something like that. But they configured it so that it would house 3,800 plus troops. But there were 5,000 of us in this brigade. The 101st, the 1st Brigade, the 101st Soldier, there were 5,000. So they stuffed us into this ship. And I mean stuffed, because, you know, the bunks were tiered like this, and it's unbelievable. So anyway, we set sail. We still didn't know where we were going. But after a couple, 3 days out at sea, then they read our orders on the intercom. They said, the 1st Brigade is headed towards Vietnam. And we thought we were gonna go to Okinawa for some training before we went to Vietnam. Now, the Marines were there in Da Nang. The 173rd, they had established from someplace out of state, but we were the first stateside unit to go to Vietnam. And when we disembarked the ship in Cam Ranh Bay, it was a 21-day sailing mission to Vietnam. The chummers on that ship were unreal. I felt so bad for them. Chumming fish. I mean, they were over the rails and just getting seasick. Thank God I didn't do that, because they were green the whole trip. A lot of them. I mean, it was just terrible. But anyway, we disembarked, and we were met by Maxwell Taylor, General Westmoreland. But anyway, we disembarked, and we were met by General Westmoreland and his entourage. And we went inland. From there, we went inland and established a temporary perimeter. Now, most units, when they went to Vietnam, they established a base camp. And they stayed there the whole time we were there. We did not. We landed in Cam Ranh Bay and moved inland a ways, I don't know how far in, but that was my first firefight experience. And it's kind of common. It was the middle of the night, and we established a perimeter with concertina wire. And we were told, you know, it vibrates, concertina wire, when you hit it, it vibrates, and people can sneak through there. So if you take sea ration cans and put pebbles in there and hang them on the concertina wire, they'll rattle. So we did that. And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, a boom, an explosion, and then it just, fireworks all over, tracer rounds flying all over. We hit the deck, and I had a sawed-off shotgun, an M16, and I'm looking around, and all I could see is figures really in a low squat scooting position, and I didn't dare open fire because I didn't know who was out there, who these shadows were. And all of a sudden, we hear ceasefire, ceasefire, and everything stopped. And it got quiet. The next morning, we got up and did our routines and whatnot. And then the next night, we go to bed, or I lay down on the ground. I'm not on a cot. The ground's good for me. And we hear nothing. And our eyes are wide open. I mean, just all night long. You know what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. But the first morning, we got up in the concertina wire, there were dead monkeys in the concertina wire. And that's what rattled the cage. And there was an outpost in the 502nd Infantry that was trying to halt and figure out who was making the noise and everything, didn't get a reply. So they fired a round, and that round went into an artillery unit. And the artillery unit opened up with an M60 and M60 back, and all of a sudden the whole air was full of tracer rounds, and it was just nuts. So the next night, going to bed, eyes wide open, and go, hey. So we get up, not a sound, dead silent. So we got up in the morning and went out around the perimeter, and these sea ration cans with the pebbles in them, you know, concertina wire, if you just touch it, it jiggles, it just waves. But all the sea ration cans were off of the concertina wire and placed on the ground, inside the concertina wire, on the ground, and in pyramids. And in the bottom of those pyramids, on many of them, the little notes that said, "Welcome to Vietnam, American Yankee." And that opened our eyes, right, Doc? That opened our eyes to, hey, this is real. So anyway, when we moved inland, we didn't establish a base camp like most units, or all the units did. They established a base camp right away. We started our operations immediately. We were in all directions, compass directions. And there's a map on the wall over there. Close to Master Cody, my buddy, 6-degree black belt in Taekwondo, a good friend. Just a wonderful man. But right next to him is a map of the area of operations. And we traveled the width and the length of South Vietnam. I mean, it was just incredible, the operations that we did. But all the while there, I started doing little sketches on sea ration boxes, on some of my experiences, and just wanted to jot them down, kind of like a little diary or something. I didn't write many words, I just did sketches and that sort of thing. And when I came back from Vietnam, I had accumulated 80, 100 artworks, and I never showed anything, and I didn't want to show anything. And it was personal, it was just a diary. And I did a painting. It was called My, not that My over there, but a painting called My. And a Vietnamese interpreter, a friend of mine, Kuhn, he said, "Jim, you gotta meet My. You gotta meet My." And I said, "Well, we're heading up into the Central Highlands." He says, "That's where she lives, with the mountain arts up there." And they were the indigenous people of the Central Highlands and the mountain areas. And so we were up there, and they had stilts, even in the Central Highlands, the villages were on stilts. And so we went through this village, and on the way through the village, and here's your story, Dee. Where are you? Yeah, okay. I smelled this bread And I knew it was bread. I could smell the odor in the air. And I said, "Cone, what is that? Is that bread?" And he goes, "Yeah, Jim, that's bread." And I said, "I gotta have some bread." He says, "I'll get you some bread." So we went into this village area, and here's this mama son with red teeth. She was chewing betel nut. I don't know if anybody knows what betel nut is, but it's kind of a drug that it run down their cheeks. It's a red betel nut. You remember that, right, Doc? Yeah. And anyway, she's rolling out dough and making bread. And so there was a loaf there, cut off a chunk and gave it to me. And you know, I've been eating rice for a whole long time. And because you can't open rations or whatnot when you're in the bush because the odor comes up and it permeates the jungle. Like if somebody smokes down the street here and you're not a smoker, you can smell that smoke. Same thing with food. So anyway, I took a bite of this bread and I went, oh, and it just dissolved in my mouth. I mean, it was just wonderful. I took another bite and I'm chewing it and I'm going, "Coon, where did they get these raisins?" He goes, "Raisins, Jim? That's not raisins. Them's bugs." So anyway, I ate it. I got my protein with my whatever it is, carbohydrates. So anyway, we walked around that village, and we got around one hooch, and I see this girl, and she has her kind of a 3/4 view, and she's got a cone hat hanging off her neck, down her back, and she's got long black hair. And he says, "Jim, she's beautiful. You gotta see her. You gotta see her." So I went around the corner and I looked, and her profile is just absolutely beautiful. So when I walked around and got more of a frontal view of her, I realized that she's got an old World War II M1 carbine laying over her lap. And I don't know who she was carrying ammo for, but she's got ammunition wrapped around her shoulder, like for an M60 machine gun, wrapped around her body. And I got in front, and then she's nursing a baby. She was the most beautiful girl I ever laid eyes on. I mean, she was just gorgeous. But she's nursing a baby, and that hit me. And I went, wow. I'm looking at beauty giving birth, and I see the instruments of death simultaneously in her arms. And that struck me. And so I did a painting of that. And Jim O'Rourke at the Rourke Art Museum approached me. He says, "We're having an auction sale." He says, "Boy, we'd love to have one of your pieces at the auction sale." So I took that painting and I framed it and I took it to the Plains Art Museum, and it just sold. I wish I'd never sold it, but I mean, it just sold. And sometime after that, somebody had seen it from the Vets organization up in Fargo. They saw that painting and they asked me if I would do an art show. And years ago, they had a big shindig in Fargo. It wasn't the Fargo Air Museum, but it was a veterans thing going on. And they asked me if I'd exhibit my work. And I said, no, I haven't shown anything. I said, I put one piece in an auction, but I haven't shown anything before, and I'm not gonna exhibit it. This is a diary, kind of, a visual diary. And so they said, please, just a few pieces. So I took a couple pieces of it. And while I was talking to somebody, the big piece right behind my buddy Dean and Paul over there, and Stacy and Sierra, that large painting there was hanging in that thing, and that was about 1980. And I feel this slap on my shoulder. And I turn around and look, and then I look up, and here's this big guy standing behind me. He said, "Did you do that?" And I went, "Oh my God." I mean, it's a big man. And I said, "Yeah, I did." He says, "I love you, man." And he gives me a quickly hug, picks me off my feet, and sets me down. And he said, "Do you see this?" And he's got teardrop glasses on. and he's tapping his glasses. He says, do you see that? Do you see that? And the bolts in his glasses are bouncing up and down. I'm going, what am I looking at? And he said, Victoria, this right here. And there's a tear running down his cheek. He says, this is the first time my eyes have run since I was released from Hanoi. He was a prisoner of war for 5 years. His name was Ted Gustus. And for 4 of those 5 years, he was tortured. And he was in solitary confinement. And he wrote a book called Prisoner. And after our greeting, which scared the hell out of me, after our greeting, he said, we're going to show together. We're going to show our art together. He's got a show that travels around the United States called the POW Experience. And it's unbelievable. It's like a lot of this, it's not a show you want to hang in your living room, but it really hits home. And it tells a story. And so he's the one that opened me up and got me to exhibit my work, because I never had planned on exhibiting my work. So he's the one that opened me up and got me going. But anyway, the accumulation of this stuff is you know, I put it to sleep several times, said, I'm not going to show it again, I'm not going to show it again. And somebody asked, and I showed it again. Larry got me into that. But the people that I've met along the way during these exhibits and showing the experiences has introduced me to a lot of people. And I want to just say hello to Doc Mahoney, sitting right here. I was exhibiting my work at the Fargo Air Museum, and he saw a painting of mine called The Heart of the Soldier. And it struck Doc, and he approached me at that show and he said, God, I would love to have that piece. And I said, well, I can't give it to you. It belongs to my grandson, Joe. So I gave it to Joe. And Doc said, oh, okay. So I thought, you know, and it was a few years later that I thought I got to get Doc a print of that painting. And so I did. And I sent that print along with Larry. Larry gave it to Doc, I believe. And Doc had a frame, and it's a soldier holding a little girl, and hugging the leg of the soldier is a little boy. And Doc's got that print in a frame that he had framed, and just above that print is another photograph of Doc holding a child. Now, Doc's a retired first sergeant, and when he was in Vietnam, he knew the orphanages well, and knew the kids in the orphanage. And when he left Vietnam, the Viet Cong, I believe, overran, and so he never found out what happened to the children. Now, for the American soldiers, the children were very special to us. I mean, you just wanted to do everything you could to comfort them. And so that struck Doc. Doc struck me since I had a chance to meet him. He's a wonderful man. He's had issues with PTSD. I'm sorry, is that okay if I say that? And, but anyway, we become friends, and so the photograph he sent me of him holding my painting and his picture inside that painting means a lot to me. Larry Mickelson, by his side there, is, he does an awful lot for the veterans. Larry's from Fargo also, and he does so much for the veterans. And so I appreciate Larry and his beautiful wife, Twyla. Appreciate him very much. They're very, very close. But anyway, about the paintings. I don't elaborate on my artwork too much. I don't get into this, which is kind of a sad painting when you look at it, and that one also. But I get into a few of them because I can tell a couple of anecdotes that are kind of humorous in my art. Dean, Stacy, could you move to the side? There's a large painting back there. And it's if you look if you look at the figure on the right, it's a Vietnamese girl, and she's eating rice. Now, she was seasoned, very seasoned to seeing soldiers, both American soldiers and Viet Cong. And so she's just eating rice, comfortably eating rice. The figure on the left is the standing figure on the far left. You know, these are weird. They're kind of abstract, but they have to be abstract to tell the story. But the figure on the left up there is heightened awareness, high alert. And he's looking to the front, and he's looking to the side, and he's looking to his back. Because you get that way. You become very alert. And the figure kneeling, the lowest one to the ground there, is giving a little girl a piece of chocolate. That's sea ration chocolate. You gonna gag there, Doc? Anyway, if you notice her hand is very large. And that's what happens when you get into a situation like that. You start giving things out, and they want more and more and more, and they become greedy, actually. So the hand represents the greed from giving. The figure in the middle of the three is paying attention to the girl, but all of a sudden, he senses something in the doorway of the building there. And there's an image in that doorway. And all of a sudden, the subconscious sees it and screams because something's about to happen. And that's as far as I take that thing. And that's as far as I explain that thing. But it's a deal where you gain a heightened awareness of the things around you. And you're very, very conscious and aware of things waiting on you. Another anecdote, well, this one's an anecdote, right behind Bill over here. It's kind of fun. We had just come off the patrol. Now, you know, you look at that baby, you go, what the heck is this guy doing here? We had just come out of the bush. And it was at the ebb or the end of the monsoon. And it's still misting a little bit, but not the heavy rains. But the ground is mud, and it's soaked. And so I just came in from the bush, and I am tired. I am so tired that I laid down in front of an artillery battery. Now, there are 6 105 millimeter howitzers in this artillery battery. And so I just lay down in the mud. And I unbloused my jungle fatigues from my jungle boots. I unblouse them and pull them out of the boots, and I just laid down in the mud. Laid my rifles, shotgun over my chest, and I just, boom, I'm out. I am tired. All of a sudden I hear, fire mission, fire mission. Well, these 6 105 millimeter howitzers in front of me get a fire mission call, so the crew gets up and they start running with these artillery shells. They're gonna load them into the breech, and they're gonna send off before a whole battery adjusts, they're gonna send out a round of just to get the coordinates. And so I stand up, and I am just mud, water. And so I go to walk away, and I feel a trickle go down my butt. And so I reach back and I rub it. I go, wow! I didn't hear a crack from a rifle or anything, but I went up straight and just, wow, an excruciating pain went from my butt all the way to my neck. And I'm standing arched back and going, oh my gosh. So I rub it again and pow, another shot. And I'm like, oh, jeez. So I'm standing there in front of a fire mission. These guns are getting loaded. And I drop the trowel. And I drop my underwear. And I look down at my underwear, and there's a scorpion around my underwear. And he nailed me twice, and that's where that painting comes from. I couldn't move. I mean, I was frozen. I mean, it affected the muscle and everything. And so somebody had to come out and help me out away from the guns. And it wasn't long after that they set off that round for adjustment, boom, and they all fired. That hurt. But anyway, looking around at the pictures, there's fun things that, a lot of funny things that have happened, and some sad things. And I don't get into the gore of Vietnam, and I don't talk about it. These paintings kind of explain themselves if you look at them and read the titles of them. But it's an experience that I now cherish, and I cherish it because I've met so many veterans, and we've become so close. And included right here in the front row, you know, is an example of this. And last week I did a visitation with a veterans home from Fergus Falls. They bussed veterans over, and they were sitting where you are now, many in wheelchairs, and I went and introduced myself to all of them, and then did a little talk, and it was just a beautiful experience. When I've traveled around the U.S. doing shows, out in New York or Rapid City, South Dakota, or wherever, you get a chance to meet so many fellow veterans. And it's just, it's been an amazing experience. And I cherish them. And I cherish all of you for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it very much. Very, very much. So. But anyway, I'll field some, I'm not gonna talk anymore. That's a half an hour, that's plenty. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, or have Judy Siegley answer them. So if anybody has any questions, yes. Where am I? But yes.
Well, I don't know if this is appropriate if you want to go there with this, but I'm curious about fear. What level, how did you do all of this? And during that time, how did you control the fear?
The fear doesn't happen until after the event. If there's a firefight, you're in one direction and you're running towards the firefight. But when it's done, that's when realization and the fear hits. You know, because you don't have time to be afraid. You don't have time to fear. You don't have time to acknowledge really what's going on. You attack the attacker. If you lay down, that's bad news. You know, if you duck and hide and lay down, you're kicked. So what you do is you attack. And so the fear isn't there until it's over, basically.
So it's training. It's training.
Just training, yeah.
Just training to get through that.
Yeah.
No, we know what we heard you say, that you have taken notes in terms of visual art.
Right.
But a lot of this work was done around a certain time.
Yeah.
When you came back. So
Right.
you want to share some of that healing or decision that you made to put this down?
Sure. Experiences. You were in my studio, you were with me quite a bit of the time when I was doing a few of these pieces. But experiences trigger things that you try to put aside. But let's say we're driving along and all of a sudden, boom, a car backfires, or you're outside and the car backfires. And all of a sudden you get this chill and an image might flash in your mind. And so you try to capture that immediately. So a lot of these pieces were done very spontaneously. I mean, not a lot of detail put into them, some a little bit, but the more detail you put in, the further away you get from the initial reaction. You know, like if, let's say on the 4th of July, and I can handle fireworks and everything, but if something comes out of the blue, kaboom, I'm off. I'm reaching for a pistol or a rifle or whatever, and I'm going towards the shot. Even to this day, that happens. Or I'll see a child looking blank, sad or whatever, And that brings me back to the children in Vietnam, which they didn't have a lot, they didn't have any. And so it's everyday situations that trigger reactions in me that I react to. And thank goodness it comes out on canvas, or paper. I've got hundreds of drawings and things that I've never displayed and probably never will. And this is just, I don't know, Jess, where are you, Jess? I don't know how many pieces there are in the show, but I got a lot more that are hanging right now, but does that answer your question? Yes, see,
I'd just like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to come here and see all your paintings and things that you've created throughout your life, and sharing your memories and your thoughts.
thank you for that,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yes.
I was in earlier and I noticed that you have done a piece on the tree
Yes.
over there. It's beautiful. And it just, when I was looking at this exhibit from
The contract.
way back and now, and you talk about the children and the blank looks in their eyes and like see on TV.
Yeah.
It's quite a,
Oh, it is. I did that painting was done in '67.
really,
Yeah. And I painted a lot like that back then, it's just. But I thought, with Ukraine going on, the sunflowers are national flower, basically. And I thought, I gotta put this piece in, so.
nice.
And I gave that to my parents many, many years ago.
Nice.
So, and they passed away, and my brother said, you gotta take this painting back. So I got it back, and I thought it would be very appropriate to put it in this exhibit, to dedicate it to the Ukraine. Yeah,
Before we turn people loose to peruse your work again, could you tell us a little bit about the mediums you work in? I noticed this pastel and oil, but I'm especially curious about this one. It's very different from everything.
oh, yeah. That's kind of a funny story. But I wanted the solitude of the little girl there, just the void around her. And that's the way I saw some of those children, is they were alone, basically, in their fright and in their horror. And so I did that piece. But many years ago, I started painting on plexiglass, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was thinking about rich man, poor man, rich and poor. And so I did a painting, and it's very similar to that, except it's a large piece. And it's two skeletons in the lower right-hand corner of this painting with a black background. And the Plains Art Museum owns it. And you see your reflection in that painting. But when you walk around that painting, it's like those two skeletons are floating. They follow the viewer. And so I called it Rich Man, Poor Man. So anybody that looked into that painting and saw themselves, I wanted to see themselves as being just like everybody else. No better, no worse, but just being a part of everyone. And so I started, after I did that large painting for that art show, I started painting on plexiglass. I did quite a few paintings. I've got one called The Climax of the 1812 Overture. And it's a funny piece, it's a large piece, and it's just this orchestra going on. Was it Arthur Fiedler, Boston Pops, I think, on 4th of July, they did a big orchestra, and the Climax of the 1812 Overture was their finale. And so I thought I would carry the musicians in that piece are just going, just kind of crazy. So anyway, I thought, I'm gonna take them a step further. I'm gonna take them going on. And so they're flying through the air, they got drummers flying through the air, they got a bass player with a string over his nose, and it's just a fun piece. So I did probably 60, 70 artworks, And I was in class in school. I was presenting in a class in school, high school, Pelican. And I said, somebody asked me in my class, my students, they said, well, what are you gonna call this series? And I said, I have no idea. So one of my students raised his hand. I said, I know what you should call it. Call it Gork. G-O-R-K, Gork. So I ended up calling it my Gork period. I wish I could remember the student's name. I think I know who it is. Troy Dahl, I think this is. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of where that came from.
There might be more questions, but stick around, everyone. We have lots of food and beverage left, and there's more work in Studio K, and
Oh, yeah, landscapes.
we'd love to talk to you more. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.